Well, it's a national cooperative. It's Canada's only national news cooperative. And the idea behind it is it's a network of both local cooperatives across the country. So right now in Halifax, Toronto, and Vancouver, and we're working on the same one up in Montreal. Those local cooperatives work together, feeding local news into local websites, but also into a national media cooperative website. And so it's a way of people really becoming involved with their own media production. So it's an open source and open publishing system. A part of that is the Dominion newspaper, which is a monthly publication that is both original content that's solicited for the newspaper, and also a collection of work that's submitted through the local media co-ops. For myself, it's essentially providing an open access and the tools for people to tell their own stories. And so it's to limit the amount of editorial kind of control and decision making over what's important and what isn't. That's why we have an open publishing system for the media co-op sites. The resources are presented there for people to tell their own stories, to get their messages across, whether it's in the form of traditional journalism and reporting, through first-hand accounts, through photo essays, through audio pieces, through videos. But I think going beyond that, participatory media isn't simply throwing the tools out there and saying, you know, do what you want. It's also about being proactive. It's not just a passive kind of term. And so we've also taken, in different cities, taken on organizing media workshops, media literacy workshops, media training, basics on reporting and writing, using video cameras, and things like that. There's still a lot of mystification around the media, that it's a sophisticated thing that only journalists or people who go through journalism school or things like that are able to do. The mainstream media in Canada has been and still is incredibly concentrated, and it's kind of come to a head, I'd say, over the last 10 years when well, there's all kinds of backstories with Conrad Black selling Hollinger and all the fraud around that, but essentially when he sold his newspapers, a fledgling television station, Canwest Global, bought up those newspapers and became kind of the national network of newspapers, of corporate newspapers in Canada, owning essentially all the major newspapers in the main cities across Canada, including in British Columbia owning 2, and in some cities owning both TV stations, radio stations, and newspapers. And so really concentrating the media in the hands of the Asper family. It was a family-owned business. And especially with them, there was a lot of controversy because they're tied very closely to pro-Israel lobby groups. And at one point there was a national revolt among journalists because they were having national editorials that were dictating the editorial line, especially on Israel-Palestine issues, in local newspapers across the country. And then there's other newspaper chains. There's a Sun Media chain, which is essentially tabloids, and they were bought by Quebecor, which is one of the main media producers in Quebec. And so that was another concentration. And they've been going through tactics like locking out journalists in Montreal and Quebec City, and then producing content from Toronto for Quebec. So the way the media co-op is structured, it's a national network, and there's one central kind of clearinghouse site where all of the media that's put together goes through. It's mediacoop.ca. But basically the foundation of it are the local media cooperatives. And so right now, as I said before, there's one in Toronto, in Vancouver, and in Halifax. Halifax was the first one. It's been running for about 2 years now. And the idea behind those is that it's a way that locally they're involved in grassroots media activism and working in different communities locally, and that it gives a way for people to produce their own news locally, have an outlet, and then also bring it together in a way that it can be shared nationally and across the country in different cities.
It's sad, because I'm telling you, and it's not.
We've been able to, just through the open process of trying to involve people across the country, a lot of people involved in grassroots campaigns, to start tackling issues before they necessarily become the issues that the mainstream media are talking about, but that are important. And I think a big one for that has been the Alberta tar sands in northern Alberta. We came up with a special issue on the tar sands a few years ago, and it came out about 6 months before any of the national media were really looking at the environmental impact and disaster. And it was really, we can't necessarily tie the links. We know that some journalists have contacted us in the aftermath of that, asking us about the coverage we did and doing follow-ups and everything. So there does seem to be some kind of link, but I think that definitely, that special issue really kind of brought the Dominion in a bit more into the forefront of covering, of really doing in-depth reporting on certain topics. So we've done a series of special issues since then. I think each of those has helped. We did one, our most recent one has been on the G20 and the G8 and their impacts in Canada, and before that we did one on the Olympics. We've also done them on foreign policy and on mining in Canada, and I think each of those, the idea behind it has been to really hone in and focus and do very, very straight reporting, avoiding opinion pieces and kind of just giving thoughts on issues, but really focusing on a way to provide the resources to do in-depth investigative reporting on issues from a different angle that the mainstream media has been ignoring. Like the media co-op, it's been 2 years since we switched to being a co-op, and so it's still, I think, it's in its infancy. It's growing and it's building on the really rich history of indie media around the world, and indie media, which is still flourishing in a lot of places, on the indie media websites and the idea behind those, and building on that process, and still really new and evolving. And so I guess our hope is to involve more and more people, that, you know, even though I'm talking about it as some kind of system that's already rolling or a structure that's in place, we're still looking for as many ideas and as many people to become involved as possible, because the idea is that it is still going to evolve and change, and we're still figuring out, even though there's 3 locals, exactly how it all fits together and how it works, how to expand into other communities and work with different organizations, and how to involve stakeholders and people who aren't necessarily defined by geography, but maybe are defined by the issues that they're working on, or by the histories that they share. We went with a multi-stakeholder co-op because it spoke a bit more to, I guess, the philosophical reasons of why we wanted to go that way. And for us, the idea of the multi-stakeholder co-op was because we see various levels of involvement and ways that people become stakeholders or members in the cooperative. And so that it isn't only the people who work on the project who have that stake in it, but the public in general has a stake in the media, in news, and access to information. We have 3 different kinds of members. We have contributor members, who are people who contribute to the local media cooperatives or to the Dominion itself, to the print magazine. We have reader members, who are people who are either subscribers or sustainers, who in a large part are the financial base of the organization. And then there's editor members too, who are people who are involved on a daily or, you know, every few day basis, who are really kind of involved in the actual kind of nuts and bolts of putting out the magazine, making sure the websites are running.